Thank you. I would like to call to order the July 20th, 2023 Plan Commission meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Hanson.
Here.
Culhane. Brink.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Dargis Johnson.
Here.
Aletsky.
Present.
And Kays, Spire, and Dolly are absent. We do have a quorum, and with the Plan Commission, we only need 4 in the affirmative for a approval or recommendation.
Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is invitation for public comment participant submittal. If there's anything not on the agenda, but someone from the public wishes to talk about it, there will be time at the end of the meeting. Just let Brandy know before we get there. So, moving on, item 4 is the approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 is the approval of the minutes from the July 6th meeting. Can I get a motion and a second?
So
I'll
moved.
make. Oh,
Second.
Motion and a second? Yes. Jana knows who did what? Yep, perfect. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 6A is our regular agenda. It's commission consideration of a concept plan of the Lakes of Willow Creek edition. Brandy, you want to take it over there?
Yes. Thank you, Jeff. So this is a concept plan approval for the Lakes of Willow Creek addition, and for proximity here on the map, you can see this subdivision is owned by J&J Land Sales, and it is just north of Willow Creek Drive, south of 3rd Avenue Northeast, and then west of 31st Street, which is still 3rd and 31st are unimproved, and then Dakota Commons development is there to the west. This is also the area where the new ice arena is located in the first edition. So why we're seeing this plat or this concept plan when we've already approved a plat for this subdivision is because we're bringing it back into our new subdivision process because we have approved a preliminary plan for this development in 2019. Since then, we did an amendment to our ordinance for Title 24, which changed the process for our subdivision process. So that's why then we're seeing this today. Nothing has substantially changed since 2019, but just to bring it back and get it into the new process, and then also because the preliminary plan from the previous process expired. So that's really what this action is doing. The park dedication was approved by the park board in 2019. Nothing has changed there. A few minor tweaks to the zoning, but they will be utilizing the combination of the C3 highway commercial, which you can see. I'll pull up a different map, which might be easier to see. So, and here, hopefully we get the colors right this week. This greenish teal, that is R3 multifamily residential. The red is R1 single family residential. So you can see here that will create the buffer with the Dakota Commons development. Because here again, north is this way. If you can see my cursor. And then the blue is R2 single family attached, and then the yellow is C3 highway commercial. And actually all of this area is already platted as the Lakes of Willow Creek first edition. So
Can you point out where the park area is, Brandon?
yes, right here. So, and that is adjacent to city-owned land there, and the creek runs right there, but this is not the creek. This is just land adjacent to it. So when this was being approved by the park board in 2019, they liked that it was adjacent to city property already. And also it's a nice location between developments where you're getting a larger use area. So this other green area, that is private detention. So that will not be, this is residential development. So eventually they'll develop this pond and then they will deed that to the city for maintenance. Because that's what happens with residential development, unless there's a homeowners association. But obviously, every subdivision needs detention. So It's just that's the way that it always is when it's residential.
So those ponds to the east are natural ponds right now, right? I mean, according to the aerial. it
I
looks-
think that, I think a lot of the grades will change. I think they'll manipulate these a little bit because I think it's quite undulating already, just how the topography is. But you can see there, I mean, it's a low area, which is usually when they do design, that they make that strategic. So that if it is already low and that's where the water is flowing, sometimes it's best not to mess with Mother Nature.
Is there any protected waters that's in the subdivision or in the area?
No, we dealt with that when we did the first edition with the closer to Willow Creek there on the south. And then same with that detention pond, the large detention pond. Let me go back to this map right here. So and since that area has already been platted and we've already worked out the agreements with that pond and whatnot, there are some protected waters and floodway in this area, floodplain as well, but nothing of concern.
What does that mean, nothing of concern?
Like, if they aren't going to be impacting any of them, so because the detention pond is in an easement, so that's not going to be impacted. That'd be the only area that would be of concern, and that's why it's not.
Okay, up in the northwest corner, you see where the lots are going to be? All of that water and stuff, that's all going to be filled in?
Yes, yep.
Wow.
So it'll be, like, right now, I don't know, I think those are maybe unnatural, where they're just the low spots that were dug out. So then it's going to be all routed to the pond area.
So the streets will dump into the pond.
The streets will go to the storm sewer, and they will go eventually to either the south pond or this pond, which then also, as we talked in great detail last meeting with drainage, will not be released greater than the pre-developed rate. So they have their control structures and whatnot.
How is that determined? How is it determined that something is not released greater than the pre-developed rate?
Engineers and their equations. I mean, that's what they do.
How is the rate determined? Do they stand there and measure the water that's flowing through? Is there a picture? I'm just curious to know, because
Yeah.
we've talked about this so
Yeah.
much.
So the simplest formula is Q equals CIA. Q is the rate. C is a runoff coefficient, and that there's charts to determine what that coefficient is. It's based on the topography, the slopes of the land, and how impervious it is initially. Then I is the infiltration rate of the soil. We have soil maps throughout the whole city. The sandier a soil is, the more it'll infiltrate into the ground. The more clay there is, the less that'll infiltrate. And then A is area. So you take those numbers and you multiply them together and you get your flow rate. And so we're able, the city, uses that formula to figure out what the existing flow is. And then the area will stay the same. The infiltration rate will change slightly because of the impervious, and the C coefficient will change drastically because of the change in development. And so then then you get a higher flow rate, and that's where you determine the size of your pond needed to let the water out at the same rate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but now you see a lot
For
of
that
this
education,
is,
Jeff.
that was really interesting. I understood everything you said.
It was the most basic form. There's more formulas.
But a lot of the soil is so sandy and stuff. Are they going to bring in a lot of topsoil and like gravel and, so that they have a good foundation for the home? So it's not like, 10 years down the road, the foundation starts doing this thing because it's on sandy soil.
Yes.
Yeah.
They will have to bring in.
It will be engineered
Yeah.
fill.
So they'll be taking out and bringing in, or just putting on top? Just wondering.
Depending on, so they'll break it, how this concept plan is, it's broken down into phases. So then after the concept plan of the large picture of the development, because it's 157 acres, then they'll submit a preliminary plan, and that'll go into greater detail, and then we'll do construction plans. And that's when you break it up into the different pieces, makes it we're getting a lot more information, in-depth information, and then that's when we can pick that apart. But that was the reason with the concept plan of not getting into the technical engineering, because these phases, these concept plans take many years to fully develop. So instead of having somebody submit the preliminary plan up front, it just makes more sense to be able to take it in pieces. So I can't say at this point what exactly, but we will ensure that the fill is compacted, the streets are built on good base, and then that the homes and the final grading have good engineered fill.
So what you're saying, Brandy, is in the event as things come in 50 years from now when we're all retired, those lots, let's just take the big pond there, and let's just say as it's taking on more water than we realize, so that pond gets bigger. So those lots may never get developed because that land is needed to hold the water.
And
Is
it's
that-
quite a bit higher,
I'm
and
just
they've already
saying that
analyzed.
That is a possibility. That's kind of the idea of relooking at it as it comes in phases, is that we realize, oh, there's more water than what we thought.
Right.
Groundwater pressure, everything, and push that pond bigger than what we thought. Those lots would just be non-existent then.
Right. But they have already done the analysis on this pond in the first phase in 2019, because it is city-owned, so we wanted to make sure that it had capacity. And those lots are quite a bit higher, so that would be like quite an event.
So do all the street sewers then, that take in the water, dump into that pond? Is that where will they go into there and then just down the river? Is that the idea?
No,
Or are they
so
enclosed?
they will go to different, I mean, depending on and I honestly, in depth, I can't say it,
But I mean,
where
is that
it's
where
going.
our streets go, is just into the river? I mean, that's where they typically go, right? We don't.
Yep, and
filter
that
that
is
water.
why it's very important that you are not washing your car on your driveway or pouring gasoline or paint, things like that, because it's going untreated and
Those-
going right to our water.
Those ponds, when those were the city-owned ponds, and when they were built with Willow Creek Drive, they were built with the intention to do retention for the whole northeastern part of town. Because like even when like Eastwoods does a development, they have to pay a pro rata share for how much water will be retained there. I mean, so those were designed for development in the whole northeastern part of town.
And this development pays into that too.
Exactly. So to answer kind of those questions, but we did, because this was
great
back when I
point.
worked for the city. Well, we did soil analysis through the whole eastern part of Watertown, and then we built those ponds on the north side of Willow Creek Drive to accommodate retention for all of that water. Each individual development still has to do detention to detain it and release it at their pre-developed rate, but those ponds are designed for the development of all of Eastwoods and this, and by the new middle school and stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeff. And here I'll show you guys that tributary area. And then each one has its own coefficient for again, another equation of how they pay, what they're required to pay for their pro rata share for the land that the city acquired, so that we did not have to do underground infrastructure, that we could go open channel. So all the area in this periwinkle is in the Willow Creek tributary. I think that's the shade of the color. That's periwinkle. You guys look confused when I said that.
I used a handful of words today that I'm gonna have to look up later. But I appreciate that.
How do you spell that?
Yeah.
Brandy, I'm just curious, on our background information, page 7, that longer paragraph about the sanitary sewer and requesting reimbursement from the city for a variety of things. How does that apply to our vote? Is that something we're supposed to be concerned about, or why is that in here?
No, really, it's just kind of residual from 2019 where it's not bad information because of discussions that were had, but the city did not participate in upsizing the lift station that was required. But that's already been installed, so there's no financial obligation with approving the concept plan.
So we can kind of ignore that paragraph.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just thought it was good information.
Well, it's interesting, yes. That's what made me curious.
Thank you for reading it.
I do read.
I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and speak in favor or against this item, please feel free to do so.
Chair, one quick question for Brandy. Yes. Brandy, is there I-1 here? Am I,
No.
no, it's just commercial?
Yep,
Okay.
there, it used to be.
Okay, is that what this slide?
And so the existing building here that's not part of the development, that is zoned industrial.
Oh, okay, that's the
So,
only
but it's
one.
the only, it's already developed there, so,
Okay,
yep.
but the yellow slash with the red, I mean, what are those then?
Yeah, that's just showing some mixed use.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
they would still have to come forward for any conditional use.
But commercial probably, okay,
Yep.
gotcha, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. My name's Doug Allen, and I live in the Dakota Commons addition, just adjacent to this, just west of this development. And I'm not here because I'm particularly opposed to the development, but I did have questions about it, and some of it revolved around the things that you had brought up about, do we need to be concerned about the request for a variance with regard to the roads, the completion of 3rd Avenue and 31st, and the replacement of the bridge there, I assume, has to be done as well. And I don't know what the, I guess I have more questions than I have really objections, but there's two things. One is the retention pond that you're referencing there. This spring, the bike path that runs through there was under about 8 feet of water, and it rose very quickly and was impassable. And I know that because I walk my dogs down there. You would have had to have swum across it, and so it took a while for that water to dissipate. And I assume it went into that retention pond there that you're referencing, but that sort of alarmed me because I thought, well, is that going to be a regular occurrence where we'll have that degree of flooding and potentially we won't be able to handle it, or it will take days or weeks for it to be absorbed. And then the other thing is the roads and the fact that Dunix has an active gravel pit over there. And right now, it's a constant stream of side dumpers and large dump trucks roaring up 3rd Avenue. And I feel like I live in the Dust Bowl because, it's just a constant bunch of dust there. And I'm curious, so we developed that road, so eventually I assume it gets paved. It's in the city, you pave the street. Does that mean that Dunix has to reroute what they're doing? Do they have to go out to the highway, or can they still continue to come through what basically will be a residential area? And if so, are the city streets really going to be built to the standard that would take that kind of pounding? Because, those trucks are big. I've seen dual side dumpers coming through loaded with rock. I don't know how many tons that is, but it's a lot. And so I have that question too. And maybe you can help me understand what the answers are to those questions.
Yeah, I can answer those. And so first question so there was a unprecedented event with this year's snow melt with Willow Creek, because there was an ice jam that actually threw off the National Weather Service. Nobody was projecting that. And so then that held back the water. So hopefully, an event like that, it was not supposed to rise that fast. But again, a little unpredictable when you're talking snow melt. It became 80 degrees. Nobody predicted that. And then an ice jam. So all out of our control. And yes, unfortunately, then the bike trail was inundated. But we are thankful that it's just a bike trail and that there is sufficient space there to detain that water. And then secondly, the fact that there is Dunnick's gravel pit, that has been a reason why now, obviously, as development progresses out here, that is on the radar for our engineering division to try to find solutions to get 31st and 3rd paved and not it have to be by concrete. Because with the heavy truck traffic that does utilize those streets, I mean, it needs to be able to withstand that. And then also, but that is going to be a very expensive project. And so with this development being adjacent, there obviously would be some contribution, and we would work that as the phasing came forward. Now, that is why too, just because of the truck traffic, that it's remained gravel, because then you're not breaking up pavement. It is in city limits though, so it is a very fine line. And so, but that is a priority that we're working on actively. And it's definitely, it's something that we want to get resolved and find the solution. Especially when we have our
timeline?
ice arena there.
What's the timeline for that?
I know that they're actively discussing it. So it's hard for me to say. I mean, as far as our CIP, we'll see what they come up with the capital improvement plan, if it's in there. But obviously that is going to be very expensive to build those streets in concrete.
So it's not in the CIP yet?
I actually can't recall. I'm not sure. And the CIP can always change, but we're working on that right now as we're going through our budgets. So CIP is 5 years out, but that's where they are figuring that out, where to fit that in.
And Dunnick's is to the southeast on the map that we're looking at. Is that where the trucks are originating from?
Yes.
It's
Yep,
been a while since I've been out there. I used to take that when I was a kid.
There's
That
their
gravel road
waste
back there.
station.
But so they're coming north and then west and then connecting up on 19th? That's what they're doing?
Yes.
So that's something too, though, that we can keep on the radar, and they can be more responsible for dust control. That is, that's a solution.
There's probably a host of things that the city could do that's outside of the purview of this particular board. I mean, I'm not trying to tell the city how to do their job or anything, but the planning commission can only do so much. We have got a pretty narrow scope, but my guess is you've got nuisance ordinances, you've got issues in terms of whether or not you put load limits on streets or something like that. I mean, obviously, if it's unpaved, it doesn't matter in terms of the actual load. But I mean, there's certainly,
Yeah, and that's
just
the thing.
depends how confrontational the city wants to get.
No, and we take complaints like that all the time. We just have to know about it. So now that we know, I'll relay that to engineering tomorrow, and they can keep that on their radar. Because dust is something that you should not have to deal with in city limits, but obviously construction and development has to take place as well. So we want to make sure that we're protecting the residents and them that it's not becoming a nuisance. So I will relay that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it seems odd to me. I mean, are you going to have to then basically redo, I mean, if you put concrete there on 3rd Avenue and run it up to where it currently is paved, it runs up to about Doc Larson's place, and then, over to 19th. Well, I mean, at what point do you decide, well, we don't need concrete anymore? So, I mean, the trucks come up 3rd, and then they're eventually going to run into a city street that isn't really built to sustain that kind of load. So I guess it's curious to me. I think, well, So we're going to put concrete down in order to get those trucks over to 19th, and then it's going to be pavement again. And I don't get that. And and maybe it's 31st that gets concrete on it, and you force Dunnock's to go some different direction. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's just construction routes, wherever they are building at, that they're bringing the truck traffic to, we're gonna experience that. But I would encourage you to give our engineering division a call and bring those concerns up, because like Liam stated, that would be more appropriate.
Yeah, we have. I mean, I've raised a couple of issues already. One being the creek that runs along there. At first, there was no mitigation, and I was worried about runoff into that creek. And we've had several events here now this year where we had 1.5 inches of rain, and suddenly that creek is roaring with water. And so I think that's going to continue. And I appreciate the fact that it was an unprecedented snowfall and quick warm up and ice jam, but it's not like those things never happen. I mean, they do happen. So, I hope that we're building the capacity of the development to compensate for that. And like I said, I'm not here opposed to it. I just had more questions really about how it was going to be handled and what the timelines were and so forth. So I appreciate you listening to my comments and concerns, and it sounds like Brandy and others are on top of it to the degree that they can be, and we'll just call the city engineer and say, stop that dust.
Yeah, and actually, what I might have you do, if you just want to write your number down, and then I can give that to Justin,
Okay.
the assistant city engineer.
Sure.
And then he can be right in touch with you.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment? All due respect, sir, irregardless of whether this development goes on or not, it still needs to be addressed with Dunick somehow, because I agree with you 100%. This development really doesn't have anything to do with 31st, and, well, it will eventually, but at this point it doesn't, so it needs to be addressed with Dunick sooner than later, so.
Yeah. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you for those comments. Yeah, they were good, and yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Appreciate you bringing that to our attention, because otherwise we don't know about that stuff sometimes, because
Sure.
just don't spend any time in that area of town.
Anyone else who would like to speak in favor or against this item?
And that's the thing too, is even just a plug as far as we're complaint based. So if there's anything like that is impacting somebody within city limits, just give us a call. You can direct it straight to code enforcement, which is at the police department, or you can call our office, because we kind of intertwine sometimes. And our number is 882-6201.
I'm sorry. Just one other comment. Thank you. Just one other comment, and that's relative to the speed. It's 35 miles an hour there on 3rd Avenue. And, I think people regularly exceed that based on my observation. And there is a bike path there, and people cross, and I see people roaring along through there. And so maybe even as a short-term thing, you reduce the speed limit, or at least make it 25 up until you get to beyond the, so, not that that'll completely eliminate the problem, but it might help anyway. Thank you. Sorry for that.
No problem. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against this item?
Hey, Brandy, where's the ice arena going to be at on that?
It is right in this, well, I'll show you on this map here. Right here. Sorry. So it's in this block 3.
I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'd just like to say, I really like where the park was put here. I know that's the park board's decision, but I know that Dakota Commons got those bike paths in lieu of having a park. So I do think that this is a good spot for a park to serve two developments like you had kind of mentioned before. So that was good foresight on that board.
Chair, I had some questions regarding that. How did we, and is the anticipation there to be some sort of structures other than just, I mean, I remember the discussions, it's been years now and it's come up several times. Is this the sort of bike trail landing pad? Is that what this was?
No, that was going to be Valley View. They had discussed that.
Okay.
Which I think that they have development plans for the Valley View Park.
Okay.
But this one is, they haven't developed a plan what they're going to do here yet. But not a bad idea.
I just wasn't, well, and I'm not necessarily in favor of that, given the fact that there's a bunch of young families right across the road there, and there isn't a park, as far as I know, east of 19th, right? So,
Eastwood Park.
is there, Eastwood's has one?
Yeah, it's along the Willow Creek.
A lot of the stuff has developed since I've ever driven by or seen anything.
It's way up
gone
on
really
12th. It's off of 12th Avenue up there.
Quite a ways away from this
So
though,
way-
right?
Right up by 14th, so 12th is where the jungle gym is and the swing sets and
Oh,
stuff.
okay, I know which one you're talking, okay, but there's nothing anywhere in the, I mean, there's nothing within walking distance of
No.
the Dakota Commons neighborhood by any means.
Right.
Okay, I thought you were, so certainly.
Sounds
I
like
mean,
you might need to
it
get
seems,
east.
You know, there's a bunch of young families there, with children, grandchildren, seems, you know, we need to have like playground equipment, it strikes me as that we should have that there. How did we land on a 3 or 3.5 acre park?
The 5% of the residential
But if it's
property.
of the residential property?
Yep. Yep, and they're actually over. They're only required to do 2.87.
Okay.
So we take 5% of what is being zoned residential.
Oh, because when I did the math, I was doing it off of the total acreage,
Yeah.
but it's the fair amount of commercial acreage. Okay.
Yep. No, yeah, just residential.
All right, well, that addresses my concerns in terms of that. The flooding or the water drainage is always an issue. I think there's been at least one other major event that predates my existence. I think it was in the 70s perhaps that it flooded quite a bit in that particular area. That has been raised to me several times as a concern. I don't know what we do about it. You know, I mean, ideally, you don't disturb any floodplain or any floodway, right? That's the ideal scenario. So the follow-up secondary scenario is making sure you have adequate retention, detention, you know. And it sounds to me like the due diligence has been done, but.
And only not disturb, you can't fill in a floodway, but then that floodplain, you can.
Yeah, you raise it, but, and it, I mean, at a certain extent, it becomes kind of a zero-sum issue though, right? I mean, every time you raise the floodplain, you're just pushing it on to the next guy or gal.
Yeah, it's something that, you know, you can look at as a community to do compensatory storage. So if you're going to be filling so much of a floodplain that you are creating that as well. So, options there of responsible development. And that's a higher standard, but something that we've talked about.
Is
But-
that
and-
something that would originate at the plan commission? Or do we originate, or is that Randy and the city council's job?
So it could come from city council, it could come from plan commission. I mean, it's just an initiation of an ordinance amendment.
I mean, because we run into this floodway, floodplain, drainage issue pretty much everywhere you build. Every direction around Watertown, there's water. I mean, that's not why Watertown's called Watertown, as we know, but historically, but
It might
it
be.
is also, you know, fitting. So,
Right. Yeah. So it's definitely, okay, so we're going to be having our maps updated by FEMA. So that would really be the time. And that's where, I mean, we have actually seriously, we've looked into it of Sioux Falls implements compensatory storage. And we've talked with them about it and I have their ordinance. So it's, and all around it helps, I mean, it helps our community rating system and then it just does, it's more responsible floodplain management. Higher standard. It's not required, but it could be a higher standard. So I think at the time when we would be adopting our updated maps, which we're anticipating will be early, hopefully 2024. then that we would also need to update our ordinance. So we could add it at that time. I think that would be the most appropriate time too.
But does that fall under Title 21 then? Is that
Title 5.
Title 5? Okay.
So that will just go to city council.
The flood zone.
Yeah, for the ordinance amendment. Because plan commission is, presides over, or whatever words, over Title 21, the zoning ordinance.
To some extent, isn't that, I mean, that's kind of why those ponds got put in, was planning that is the water off of the Willow Creek watershed and the Big Sioux watershed converges farther south. And the purpose of the ponds was to retain the water from the Willow Creek events so that the surge head from the Big Sioux could go past before the Willow Creek water hit it, so that way that there wasn't further flooding downstream.
That's
so
true.
That's why those ponds were built and, you know, by the city. The city paid to build them, but now they recoup those costs with the pro rata share and the developments.
Yep.
moving forward.
That's another great point, Jeff. Great history on the Willow Creek tributary.
Getting old.
And then two, this tributary, you only detain the 5-year event. So usually you do the 100-year because for that reason of how oh my gosh, words, or all of the hydrology, how that works together. And that, like you stated, that would be released before everything else would be hitting the river. So, good point, Jeff.
One quick question, Brandy. I'm sorry, Jeff. Is there a reason that they didn't pull Pondview Avenue and Second Avenue to go over to 31st for future? Or will that, I mean, is that so far out with development that they just didn't feel that it would be necessary with the sand pit there?
So that was really, I mean, as much as you can limit access onto a collector, and these are major collectors, so that's actually ideal. And then two, just how the drainage is working. I mean, that you can, then you're not having to extend through that area because it's low.
So along that same question, then, the streets are long. I mean, they're long before you have a turn, you know, an opportunity to, I missed the house, I gotta, you know, you'll use someone's driveway to turn around, obviously, but you don't have a shorter block, I guess is where I'm going with that. Is that, there was no concern with snow removal and street department, fire department had no, the fire department, again, I mean, they know where they're going, they can see the flames, but I'm just saying, you miss your driveway, you're gonna be, you know, a long route around to go back around to find the place, is all I'm saying. I'm just asking, there's no concerns on that for fires and snow?
Because of the distance, like, that it's not exceeding because you have two access points still. And another reason too in a typical development or block configuration, you would see this street extension. However, it's going to dead end here anyway. So it actually kind of helps with traffic flow.
Any other comments? We have a motion and a second. Seeing no other comments, I'll do a roll call vote. Brandy, please.
All right. Aletsky.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes. Motion is approved. Moving on the agenda, item 6B is commission consideration of resolution 2023-18, plat at Centerpoint Second Edition. Brandy, will you take over, please?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Let me just get this rotated here. Okay. So this is before you today because the previous replat of this area was administratively approved, and you cannot approve a subsequent plat within, a subsequent minor plat within 3 years of a replat. So that's really why this is in front of you, and because there's no infrastructure being installed. This was already a platted development. This is along Highway 212, and then where 23rd Street and 7th extend there. in the original Willow Creek Village second edition. And then over here is where you get into the Morris edition. And so then all of this infrastructure was installed. But then now they're looking to develop lot 1, but where the sanitary sewer ran was where they needed to put the building. So they now moved that. So now what this plat is doing is just relocating that easement, vacating where it was previously in that hatched area. And then now they moved it where where you typically put infrastructure. Actually, you typically put it in the right of way or under the street. For whatever reasons, when this development was approved in 2009, I believe, they were allowed to cut across where this curve happens, and then it lines back in with 7th. So just to make it run along the lot line so that you have more usable area for your lots, then that's why then it has been moved now. So then this plat is memorializing that. And it could, and there's nothing, this would have been administratively approved, but because the replat came before to change those lot lines, and then at that time, we did have a development agreement because we did need public infrastructure moved as they did. So for those reasons, and that's where, that's why it's before you guys today.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, there is no public hearing with plat, so we got a motion and a second. Any further questions, comments, concerns?
And it's gonna ingress, egress off of 7th, right, still?
Yes. Yep, it will not. So it,
Is there any sort of frontage with that? I see there's like a opening to the
oops, sorry.
east on this map. Is
Okay,
there like some sort of frontage road that's gonna
Oh.
go parallel?
no,
Okay,
no.
no other questions.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 7 is open public comment. We have no public here, assuming we don't have any. Item 8 is new business. We got the SDPA annual conference. You wanna give us an update on that?
Yeah, so I just wanted to provide to you guys the agenda so you can look at the different sessions that we'll be having and just what we have planned for this year's conference. It will be held in Mitchell on October 24th to the 26th. Should be a very great event, and just wanted to encourage you guys. There are specifically this Robert's Rule of Orders, ex parte communications, and parliamentary procedure is very applicable to Plan Commission, Board of Adjustment. But then all around, I mean, just a lot of great sessions this year. So we want to encourage you guys to come. We will cover your costs to participate. So just let us know. I won't even, there's not even really a deadline. I would say I'll email you guys because I'll look and see when our the block of rooms expires so that we can get you booked underneath the conference rate. And then 2, I'll confirm when the if our registration fees change, but they don't because I'm the vice president and I know that. So I'm sorry, it's been a day.
I got a question on the preservation and the agricultural easement and stuff. Is that going to be kind of tied in with the new farm bill? Aren't they talking about more easements and stuff with that too on the farm bill?
Could be. I don't know. I mean, if that is like a current event, I'm sure, and if this, and you're saying that this individual is involved with that?
No, I'm just wondering, because I'm on the Conservation District Board too for Cottington County, and we've been really doing a lot of talking about that kind of stuff too.
It definitely, it seems like just even reading the background, that it definitely could, yes. Could deal with that as well. So yeah, that's all I had there.
Thank you.
Chair, also I sit on the Cottington County child care task force or work group or whatever it's called. I'm not entirely sure. And I occasionally attend meetings. I haven't been great about it. But one of the issues that's come up a couple times was questions and concerns regarding like planning and zoning and coming and doing conditional uses. We haven't had one in a long time. Are daycares permitted now?
No, but
I was hoping that we could get a discussion item, maybe even next time, or maybe the second meeting from today, where we just discuss sort of permitted versus conditional and where they're accepted, where daycares are allowable as conditional uses, and then talk about maybe adjusting that. Any other requirements?
and actually too, Liam, that has been on our radar and something that we want to work on and move them to being a special permitted use so that we'll just have the stipulations and we know the things that we look at with a daycare. So it is a
Yeah.
little unnecessary for it to come to the board where it's like, so you have a fence, you have sufficient parking, off-street parking, loading, whatnot, employees and but then otherwise the guidelines are under the state
Yeah,
license and
exact-
everything. So
Exactly. We don't need to be, frankly, assuming that it meets whatever the regular criteria are, parking, off-street parking, that kind of stuff. But I would just, if possible, get a discussion item on the agenda, and then we can move forward with it. And I think Ms. Faust from the welfare office, who's kind of pushing that as part of her strategic planning,
Okay.
would join us maybe with some of the resources from Brookings and some other places.
And you know what I'll do too, Liam, because that has been already, that's kind of
We talked about it, I think, the last time we did one.
Yeah.
Which was, I think, 3 years ago.
well, we
It's been
did
a long
just have
time.
one recently,
I must have missed that one.
but we have not had many. And the thing too is that there's a lot of daycares that operate without that conditional use too, as with so many things as well. But just to keep everybody on the
Yeah.
same playing field. So since we've already initiated that's something that we want to accomplish, I will just work to put a draft together and
Sure.
then we can review it and then we can see that come forward as an ordinance amendment.
Cool.
So, and there's a lot of, I'm going to just tell you guys so that I hold myself accountable, Jenna and I both, that we want to get a lot of ordinance amendments done before, for sure, I would like to, before the end of the year, for sure, before the next construction season, because there's a lot of little tweaks that we see that do not work. And so we're motivated to get those done.
Me personally, I'd be in favor of just moving it straight to a permitted use. I mean, it doesn't even have to be special permitted in my mind. I mean, I'm not necessarily speaking for the whole board, but I mean, in my 10 years here, we have never once denied.
Yeah, we did. We
Did we
denied
did?
one.
We did
Yes,
deny
we
one?
did.
Okay. I was
That's
gonna
just
say,
where I
could
was
not
gonna go,
remember ever
guys,
denying
is
one.
what if there is opposition?
I think.
Where do those neighbors
Right.
get to voice their concerns then?
I think that's where, with it being a special permitted use, then we build everything that would be the issues, and then, so it still gives a neighbor, and we can put it in there where if they're not complaint, but we can be strategic about it where it can give some protections to adjacent neighbors, and that's why I think it's important to at least have some stipulations of like a fence or just things that would be of concern in a residential district to protect the neighbors. So I'll look into that and get something in front of you guys,
Appreciate it.
or we'll look into that.
Cool.
It's not,
Do we have any old business?
no, we're a team. Just didn't want to leave her out.
Do we need to go into executive session?
No.
We are adjourned.
All right. Thank you, everyone.